All right, everybody, welcome. For consideration of time, I think we are going to get started for today. Welcome to another session of After School Nuggets with the Utah After School Network. Today we are joined by Stacy Bauges and Michelle Fowler from PowerUp, and they're going to talk to us about 30 ways to align physical activity with academic standards with PowerUp Fitness. So Michelle, take it away.
Yeah. Hey guys, just make sure everybody can hear me okay. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here with us today. As Angel mentioned, my name is Michelle Fowler, and I am the Director of Market Development for PowerUp Fitness. On the line today, we also have our CEO and founder, Stacy Bauges. She actually had a lot of dental work done this morning, so she's not able to talk through the presentation. I'll be presenting, but she'll be in the chat box. So if you ever have any questions during the presentation, just go ahead and put those in the chat box, and Stacy will be there to help you out. So we will go ahead and get started with our live webinar today, which is 30 plus ways to align physical activity and academics. So today we're sharing more than 30 ways to align games, exercises, and activities to academic standards. All of the activities today are from our Power Up Your School and Power Up Peanuts program, so you're getting a sneak peek into those. You'll hear more about our programs later on, but I first wanted to share the other free resources we have available in addition to things like this webinar. And don't worry, these links will be included if you fill out the post-webinar survey that the Utah After School Network puts out. We'll be able to send you the resources that we mention in today's webinar. I'd encourage you to check out our tips and tricks page, where we have featured content on a variety of topics, as you can see on the left there. Also, just last week, given the current crisis we're facing with COVID-19, we've added an at-home page to our website with resources for families to get physically active together. Those resources can be found here at powerupfitness.net/at-home. These are a combination of short videos of PowerUp exercises, sample PowerUp lesson plans, and lists of games and activities to support physical activity even in the living room. In addition to these free resources, we are also providing a subscription video base that you can purchase, and we'll put some more information about our premium videos later on in the chat. So, as I mentioned, the free resources, please feel free to share these resources with your students, members, and families and colleagues in your network while everyone's still, kind of staying at home and staying safe. Just a few housekeeping notes before we dive in. First, this is a live webinar, so while unexpected, we hope that you'll forgive any unforeseen technical glitches. We'll pause periodically for some Q&A, so feel free to submit your questions anytime in the chat, and we'll get to those during the Q&A portions. We'll also be sending out, if you fill out the completion survey, we'll be sending out completion certificates, and I'll provide my contact information as well as Stacy's contact information if you'd like to learn more about PowerUp after this webinar. So, like I mentioned, my name is Michelle Fowler. I am the Director of Market Development for PowerUp, and then also on the line we have our founder and CEO, Stacy. So kind of some background about Stacy. As a pediatric exercise physiologist working in a school system, it was hard for her to see recess and physical education getting cut from the school day. And if it wasn't completely cut out, students were getting pulled from PE and kept from recess for specialized academic intervention. While important, what was so frustrating about all of this was that administrators couldn't see how valuable movement and physical activity was for academic achievement. So in 2012, Stacy launched PowerUp with the mission to empower youth through fitness, education, and fun. The picture you see here is of kindergarten and first graders, is in our first PowerUp Your School program in the 2012-2013 school year. Power Up Your School is a physical activity program aligned directly with the Common Core state standards. It's most commonly used in before and after school programs, PE classes, and youth-focused organizations, and even summer camps. Since 2012, we've spent several years on product on program development and validation and building out our instructor training platform. That platform became available in 2019, and the PowerUp programs have quickly spread to more than 50 sites across 11 states. So we're excited for you to be here today. When we wrap up, I'll share a little bit more about how to power up your community. So let's get started. We're talking about active learning. Active learning involves discussion, problem solving, presentations, group work, role play, debates, etc. Anything that gets students interacting with each other and engaging with the learning material. What's often overlooked is how traditional academic material can be integrated into physical activity. Hopefully today you'll leave here with a few new ideas that foster active learning in your environment. We'll cover more than 20 stretches, exercises, and games that are applicable to over 40 academic standards, including both math and English language arts, or ELA, standards. So where would we be without some learning objectives? So today we will apply creative thinking to the application of academic standards, learn stretches, exercises, and games that can be implemented in a variety of settings, and we're going to have fun. Okay, so if I asked you to repeat those objectives back to me, would you be able to? If you're mumbling to yourself, I'd probably be doing the same thing if I hadn't helped put these together. So let's try them again, but this time with movement. I'm going to ask you to follow my directions here. As I read the first objective, I want you to move your hands toward your head as if you're putting on your thinking cap. Today we will apply creative thinking to the application of academic standards. For the second one, reach across your body or up in the air as if you're stretching right where you are. Learn stretches, exercises, and games that can be implemented in a variety of settings. And finally, do a little dance or movement that feels fun to you as I read, have fun. Now, could you repeat the learning objectives back to me? That's active learning. We associated a movement with the activity, added a little repetition, and it's likely easier to immediately recall. Chances are you'll probably even be able to recall that again later today. That's the most basic example of active learning, and that's the principle behind the Power Up Your School program and foundation for the Peanuts program. Every single physical activity session is aligned with academic standards to engage kids in active learning. The flow of today's exercises will follow that of a typical Power Up Your School session. First, warm-up activities, then a few of the strength and endurance exercises, and we'll end with several of the games, all of which promote active learning and align with academic standards. None of these activities today or in our school program require any equipment. They can be performed in a variety of spaces, from the gym to the cafeteria, long hallways, even classrooms. So I want to make things today applicable for you. So that brings us to our first poll of today. What grade levels are you working with the most often? So you should be seeing a poll here pop up shortly. So just go ahead and fill out which grade levels you're working with. And we'd love to see that feedback. If you work with several of these ranges, select the option that reflects the largest portion of your participants or where you spend the most time. If these ranges aren't applicable to your work, perhaps you're a partner or a resource provider, we'll provide several ways to help share this kind of content today too. So, Stacy, what are you able to see what our poll results are looking like, what our majority is today?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be, I'll make these public here in just a second, but it looks like we've got a good mix across the board with the heaviest concentration in the elementary age range, and then another handful that maybe the grade levels aren't applicable because you serve in some type of partner role or administrative role, in which case this can be some great information that you take back to your team and those within your own network. So we'll give them just another second here to respond, and let's share these results.
Perfect. Well, thank you everyone for filling that out. These learning goals outline what a student should, oh, sorry, I think I skipped down. All of the academic standards you'll see today are Common Core state standards. We understand that there are mixed opinions on the use of Common Core state standards, so we want to quickly address what they are, why we chose to align with them, and provide you with a resource if your state no longer uses these standards. The Common Core is a set of high quality academic standards in mathematics and English language arts, also known as ELA. These learning goals outline what a student should know and be able to do at the end of each grade, and they are still widely used across the country. PowerUp Your School is aligned with the Common Core state standards to be an accessible program for schools and meet the learning needs of students nationwide. If your state no longer uses these standards, we've received great feedback that it has been easy to align a Common Core standard reference in our program with a current state-specific standard, such as Utah.
Michelle, I'll jump in right there for just a second. Was doing a lot of research on the educational standards in Utah and saw that direct alignment. And one of the resources that we provided that you'll get access to after you fill out the post-webinar survey is a reference sheet that Michelle's going to talk about here.
So we have provided a resource under the handouts tab. I'm not sure how that's coming through exactly on Zoom. Titled Statement Paper, Power Up Your School Aligned with Common Core. So this paper demonstrates the alignment of the Common Core state standards with several individual state standards. So let's get to the activities. Each activity slide will look like this. Don't worry, you don't need to write down every standard and exercise listed here. We will be sending out a recording of this webinar to everyone participating, and we've already uploaded a copy of the presentation, or you will be receiving a copy if you do at the end fill out the survey with the QR code that you'll see at the very end of this presentation. So we will start with some warm-up activities. With this set of warm-ups, we're going to focus on counting, aligning with several counting and cardinality standards listed here for younger students, and for older students, reinforcing multiplication. The first video you're about to see will feature students jogging with high knees and then jogging with their heels towards their bottom. These are both great warm-up exercises that can be done standing in place or moving across the gym like you'll see here. So let's take a look. You can see the students and instructor lifting their knees up towards their chest to align with the counting standards. You can perform these together as a group, counting by 1s, 2s, 5s, 10s, 20s, with each knee lift or bottom kick. So for this exercise, it can be done in place or as a walking activity, counting slower, or as a jog for faster skip counting. In addition to counting up, you can count backwards or count down, aligning with multiple standards. So up next is a Frankenstein walk, and this is a great stretch for all ages. To perform a Frankenstein walk, arms are out in front, parallel to the ground. Students then step, kicking one leg up as close to horizontal as comfortable. Using the verbal cue of parallel and horizontal also brings in geometry standards to this exercise. You could count by 10s all the way across to 100, or count by 100s to 1,000. So the next you'll see is the 3-step stretch. This is a great warm-up activity to reinforce multiples of 3 or really any odd number. So stepping forward, cross right front in front of the left, then step left in front of right, then right in front of left. On the third step, they bend forward and touch their toes. That's because they're bending forward on their third odd number, you'll end up alternating legs with each bend. To add the math component, with each step, whisper the number 1, 2, and then on the forward bend, shout out the number 3, toe touch and shout 3. Step and whisper 4, 5, bench touch toes, shout 6. You can really do this with any odd number. It can be a 5-step stretch, 7-step stretch. I'll also note that this is an activity that crosses the midline or center of the body, which science proves boosts brain power and critical thinking. In this example, we're reinforcing multiples of 3, odds and even numbers, and even constructing a pattern, all math academic standards. The last exercise in this group is hip hops. In this video, we're continuing with math and counting standards, counting by 2s. So you could also count by 5s, 10s, or bring in some ELA and review the alphabet, hopping side to side through the ABCs, giving a letter to each hop. You can do this exercise in place or moving forward like in the video. So to review those, we covered all of the counting standards here. And with the Frankenstein walks and the 3-step stretch, we represented addition and subtraction. We also incorporated skip counting in several of the examples. And as an added bonus not listed here, we brought in some geometry standards for older students by describing our Frankenstein walks using the terms parallel and horizontal.
Michelle, interrupt you really quick. And while you're only seeing K1 and 2 standards on the screen here, several of the upper elementary and even lower middle school standards still align with that review of skip counting. It's just worded a little bit differently. They don't word it as skip counting because we're reinforcing those multiples, as Michelle mentioned there. So I just want to add that in. So even though you only see K through 2nd grade standards listed here, throughout our programming, and what you'll see on that resource paper as well is how those similar activities align for the older students as well.
Thanks, Stacy. And since you brought that up, I will also bring up a common question that we are asked a lot, whether our Power Up Your School instructor training includes how to align the activities and standards. So we have a training module called Looking at the Lessons, where we dissect how to align the standard with the activities listed in the Power Up Your School lessons. We strive to provide high quality training so that anyone, whether they have classroom teaching experience or they are a community volunteer, can be successful with any of our programs after they've gone through our online training and receive our support materials. So let's move into some of the operations and algebraic thinking standards. One of the easiest ways to incorporate multiplication is simply by describing sets and repetitions of an exercise. We can describe sets and reps several different ways, aligning with a different math standard with each description. Let's start by watching the lunge video so you can learn the exercise. In the video, Stacy's even bringing in some science and physiology into teaching the exercise. Since we have various clips from several different sessions, we didn't do this in the video, but we could have easily incorporated multiplication just by how we describe an equation. We're going to do 2 groups or sets of 3 lunges for a total of 6 lunges. Let's do our first set. Count with me. So 1, 2, 3. Let's do our second set. 1, 2, 3. 2 sets of 3 equals 6 lunges. In that example, as the instructor, I solved the problem for you. You could also say, let's do 2 sets of 3 lunges. How many lunges total would that be? And the students would have to answer. Now we're going to see a wall push-up. Here is the wall push-up video.
How about that? All right, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start with 1 minute. 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 So we're going to
So for these, students find a spot on the wall, facing the wall, hands shoulder width apart at chest level, walk feet back 2 steps. To perform the push-up, bend your elbows and push back up. Let's bring in the division. If we want to do 10 push-ups total in sets of 5, answer the chat box if you know how many sets we will do. If we want to do 10 push-ups in total in sets of 5, how many sets would that be?
If you can't see the chat box, hover down at the bottom where you see maybe your tools for Zoom. If you click on participants, sometimes the chat box is there. If you're not seeing the chat box option there, you can click on the 3 little dots that say more, and then there should be a chat option. So if you're not able to see that, hop in there. Here comes everybody. Awesome jobs. Yep, answers 2. Great work.
Great. So up next are squat jumps.
Boy. Sorry, you all. Okay, so this one is not a video, and my apologies, that's an error on my end of things. So for a squat jump, the way we described this one, you can see the young man in the green soccer shirt. He's starting kind of down in a seated position. I often share with kids, act like you're gonna sit in a chair, but don't put all your weight into the chair. So kind of hover as if you're going to hover over a chair, and then you jump right up in the air. So Michelle will talk about how we can add the academics into that too.
Yeah. So squat jumps are a great cardio activity and easy to build in multiplication. So this time we're using a comparison statement. We've got 8 squat jumps total. We can do 2 sets of 4 or 4 sets of 2, and then let the students pick. To sum these 3 up, multiplication and division are probably some of the easiest standards to work into general fitness exercises through sets and reps. You can work with classroom teachers to determine which tables to focus on. For example, we could have done all 3 of those exercises working through our 4s, 4 times 1, 4 times 2, and so on. So we're going to stick with math, but switch to some of the measurement and data standards here. Let's think about telling time. We can work this in a couple of different ways. First, let's take a look at wall sits. So sometimes we dance during wall sits. We've got to keep things fun. But to work time into these, I could say, let's hold a wall sit for 1/4 of a minute. How many seconds would this be? The answer is 15 seconds. Another note about wall sits, you can also talk about angles here. I've got a 90-degree angle or right angle in my knees. You can incorporate angles into lunges as well. So this next image shows a plank position. Planks are another static exercise that is easy to incorporate with the time and data standards. How many of you can relate? You instruct students to watch the clock and do something for 30 seconds. Most often, they'll wait until the second hand gets back to the 12 or maybe the 6 to start their 30-second activity. These time-based exercises are a great way to work on that. So enter in the chat box if you know the answer to my next question. We want to start our plank, for example, with the second hand on the 3 and hold until it gets to the 9. How many seconds will this be? So with the second hand on the 3 and hold until it gets to the 9, how many seconds will this be? Great, seeing some responses come through. That's right, 30 seconds. So there are a lot of great ways to build these time and data standards into the 2 static exercises, the wall sit and the plank. For older students, you can also make the time fractions more complex. Let's hold a plank for 1/10 of a minute. How long would that be? If you know, answer in the chat box. So let's hold a plank for 1/10 of a minute. How long would that be? That's right, 6 seconds. Great job. Next, we're going to wrap up some of our math integration with measurement and geometry, talking about the configuration of shapes for younger students and scaling up to perimeter area, angles, and even the Pythagorean theorem if you want. Starting with shape jumps. This is another exercise that can easily be scaled up or down based on the grade level. One of the few that we don't have a picture or video for, so I'll ask you to use your imagination here. We'll do an easy example, a triangle. We'll be talking about shape and direction. Think to yourself, how many sides does a triangle have? 3 sides. So we're going to jump 3 times to form the shape of a triangle. So put on your visionary goggles and pretend we're at the bottom left side. Let's jump up to the top point. Now to get to the bottom point of our triangle, we'll jump backwards and to the side. And then let's connect the 3rd side and jump to our starting point to the left. Great. So 3 jumps to form our 3 sides and draw our triangle. Now let's scale that up for older students. Let's build a triangle with a perimeter of 9. Since jumps are our unit of measure, how many jumps per side would that be? Answer in the chat box if you know. So we're building a triangle with a perimeter of 9. How many jumps per side would that be? Yep, that's right, 3 jumps per side. So let's form our triangle, jumping 3 times per side. Starting at our bottom left side again, let's jump up to the top point, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now back and to the right, 1, 2, 3. Great, and then we finish the connection, jump to our left, jump 1, 2, 3, and there it is. You have made a triangle with a perimeter of 9. You can do this with different shapes. You can even incorporate angles in this activity as well. Now we're going to measure the distance between point A and point B. We want to measure that distance in long jumps. So take a look at this video. So in this video, you saw students performing their long jumps. They start with their feet together, squat slightly, arms start behind you. You'll swing your arms and jump forward as far as you can, landing with 2 feet. That's 1 jump. From where you land, perform another long jump. Continue long jumps until you arrive at point B. We'd ask the student how many long jumps did it take. Of course, their answers will vary. Their long jump is their own unique unit of measure. So going on to our next video, bunny hops. So here we changed our unit of measure from long jumps to bunny hops. A really small hop to measure, we want to make sure we count each hop. Our distance between point A and point B didn't change, but our unit of measure did. For the bunny hops and long jumps, we can talk about how those units of measure might compare to meters versus centimeters. You can also talk about making estimated guesses, overestimating and underestimating. There are several ways to build additional content in, and you can easily scale the content up and down for all 3 of those activities based on grade level.
Yep, I'll jump in there real quick, Michelle, too, and say you could talk about the number line as you're comparing overestimation and underestimation. You can even turn that into multiplication and division. So once they've realized how many it takes them to get across, if their long jumps were 3 times longer, how many fewer jumps would it take you to get across? So you can kind of mix in a couple of different things there too.
Yeah. All right, let's transition to ELA, or English Language Arts, standards you see here. We're going to work on letter recognition, phonics, and spelling. So our first video is the alphabet stretch. Okay, go. This is great as a warm-up, cool down, quiet time stretch, or classroom activity. Working your way through the alphabet, use your body to form each letter. We see the students doing this activity in the video here. You can also bring a spelling component into this as you stretch with each letter. Ask students to share the words that start with that letter. Apple starts with A, and so on. Another spelling activity is spelling word jumping jacks. This is a great one to coordinate with classroom teachers on, making sure you have a list of the weekly spelling words.
-3.
So in the video here, you'll see we're doing math problem jumping jacks, but it could easily be spelling word jumping jacks, one jumping jack as we call each letter for the word, such as PowerUp. So another common question that we get is how to make these games and exercises inclusive. So none of the exercises are competition oriented, and the few games that are can be played without elimination. We encourage students of all abilities to move in a way that feels good to and for them. Everyone's joyful movement is unique because it's their own. So if it's just doing the arm portion of an activity or moving slower, we try to set a space in a way where students are focused on themselves and not on others. Also, because these don't require any equipment, it minimizes sensory sensitives and coordination requirements as well. So jumping right into our next ELA activity, aligning with conventions of standard English, is one of my personal favorites that has been proven to be fun for all ages, pre-K all the way up to college to grown adults. This is called the alphabet relay and is a relay style race. Students are divided into teams and line up single file within their team. On go, the first person from each line is going to run to the stopping point, shout out a word that starts with the letter A, then run back to the end of their line. Then the second person runs to the turnaround point, shouts out a word that starts with the letter B, next person C, and so on. To keep things active, when the team gets through Z and finish, they start doing jumping jacks, and that's how I know their team is done. Take a look.
Do y'all know the name of this game? It's the alphabet relay. What was your letter? Oh,
I mean F.
F. Awesome.
Mine was T.
E.
I picked T.
Awesome.
What did you say? I, J, K, L, M, O, I'm what? You're R. You're R.
So this game also incorporates social emotional learning with teamwork and communication. I also want to add that this game can be played right in your living room. Instead of running to a start and stop point, you could perform a certain number of exercises. For example, 5 jumping jacks and then a word for the letter A, 5 jumping jacks, letter B. A family of 4 could pair up into 2 teams, alternating the jumping jacks and letters, or a family could do it round robin style and take the relay competition out of it if desired. So we have to get a little creative about the application of these next standards, but they still align if you think strategically. This first set of standards wants students to understand the progression or timeline of a story. Well, when we're running ladders, we aren't exactly telling a story, but we are doing things chronologically and in a pattern, the overall concept of this key ideas and details standards. Take a look. So for our ladders, students start on the sideline, run to the first point and do 1 jumping jack, run back, run to that second point, 2 jumping jacks, run back, run to the third point, 3 jumping jacks, and run back. Our pattern is run, jumping jack, run, and we're progressing through the activity by adding a jumping jack at each stopping point. This can also be done in place, at home run, in place for 10 seconds, 1 jumping jack, run for 15 seconds in place, 2 jumping jacks, and so on. Up next is a game called Food Frenzy. This is one of my personal favorites, and this one is best for our younger students up until about the 4th or 5th grade level. Here, we're interpreting words, phrases, and figurative meanings. A food and an action are called out, and students use their imagination and act out what that might look like.
Like bacon.
So kids come up with really great things. Sometimes it's pop like popcorn, fry like bacon, scramble like an egg. If you have a fun food frenzy idea, feel free to share it in the chat box. One of me and Stacy's personal favorites is when students try to string like cheese. So a few more games today. This next one is called Shipwreck. Here we're connecting words to a visual representation. The idea with this game is that you don't want to be the last one to perform the action or you're out. If you don't want it to be an elimination game, it can still be just as fun as a call and response game. When the instructor says front of the boat, students run to the front of the room. Back of the boat, run to the back. Sides of the boat, they can run to either side. Swab the deck, squat and hold, pretend like you're mopping the deck. Walk the plank, get into a plank position. Overboard, find a partner, sit down, and pretend like you're rowing a lifeboat. Captain is coming, stand on one leg with a salute. Take a look. So to summarize the link of those activities to the standards, we did things chronologically and in a pattern, the overall concept of the key ideas and details standard. We interpreted words, phrases, and figurative meanings. And we connected words to a visual representation and used movement to describe key ideas of the setting of our story. With the Shipwreck game, this can really be adapted to any story or setting. On a farm, a different time period, you can get really creative and work with classroom teachers to make the game applicable to the story or reading of the week. Okay, so the next 2 games align with these standards about visually representing main ideas, recalling key details. The standards about asking clarifying questions can be applied to almost every exercise and activity we've shared today with a simple call and response. For example, how many are we doing? What are we doing? How do we get to this one? First up, Science Explorers. In this game, we're going to correctly identify animals and an object in an applied setting. So, for example, we could pretend we're in the jungle. We'd ask, what types of things might we find in the jungle? Let's run like a leopard, slither like a snake, crawl like a spider. It doesn't have to be animals. You could say swim down the river or swing from tree to tree. Science Explorers, like Food Frenzy, is going to be best for younger students, but they have a lot of fun with it. Okay, so the last one of the day is great for all ages, cardio freeze tag. It's a lot like traditional freeze tag, and simply instead of being frozen when you're tagged, you perform an exercise. You'll see it demonstrated in the video here.
Yeah, and I'll jump in before the demonstration. Obviously, these were all filmed before any social distancing regulations be needed. But this game, the way you can make it touch-free and keep the social distancing in place is shadow tag. So if you have the option to play it outside, they can step on one another's shadows instead of physically touching each other. And then Michelle might mention it in a minute, and if she doesn't, I'll mention it here. Hopefully in the exercise Shipwreck game, you notice that the kids were kind of like hopping to get from place to place, it's because they were in such a small space. And here in the cardio freeze tag game, we're skipping because there's so many kids in this gym with us. It just slows the games down and keeps things a little bit safer. So here, we'll take a look.
So volunteers are the taggers and everyone else tries to avoid getting tagged. But if or when you do get tagged, you'll perform squat jumps until you're unfrozen by someone. Or you can add some math or other types of recall to this game. For example, when you're tagged, you solve the problem 100 divided by 10 and do that many jumping jacks to unfreeze. And like Stacy mentioned, also different ways to slow this game down for a bit for safety with large groups. Instead of running, you can skip or gallop, slow it down to hop or lunge, kind of whatever works for your space. And that's a big thing with all of our programs, all of our games and activities, is that they're easily scaled on the academic level, but they're also easily scaled on the physical activity level as well, depending on the space, the grade levels, everything's pretty easily scalable. So I hope you've enjoyed these resources today. Although this webinar, you know, things are a lot different now that many of us are homebound. And if you're currently at home with your kids, I hope it's something that you can use right away. And for those of you planning for programs, lessons, and classes once things do get back to normal, I hope this has given you some new tools in your toolbox. So if you enjoyed these activities today, you might really like our PowerUp Your School or PowerUp Peanuts program. You also hopefully noticed that all of these activities and games do not require any equipment. Our programs are designed to be totally flexible for any space, any time frame, without the burden or extra costs associated with needing equipment, and we're always building in the active learning components. If you're interested in any of our programs or want to learn how you can power up your community, please let us know. So please fill out the survey that we will link here in just a second. And any participants in today's webinar will get 10% off any PowerUp bundle purchase. So to take advantage of that, please make sure that you fill out the post-webinar survey. And if you're a community partner or resource provider and think our programs could be a good fit in your community, please let us know. We would love to connect. All of our program bundles include everything you'll need to teach the program effectively, from online instructor training, a manual, and lesson plans to permission slips and waivers and ongoing support materials for any setting. So thank you again for joining us today. The resources will be emailed out to you if you do fill out that post-webinar survey. Up here on the screen, you can see my contact information as well as Stacy's. Feel free to give us an email, and Stacy will also type out that information in the chat box as well. And then here you're seeing the QR code to the post-webinar survey. Please fill that out on behalf of the Utah After School Alliance. And then if you do fill that out, we would definitely be able to send out our resources, or you're more than welcome to get in touch with us if you'd like to see some sample lesson plans, set up a call with us to talk about PowerUp and how maybe that could be a good fit for your program. So I'll take a breath here. If you have any questions, please feel free to fill those out in the chat box. We'll check in with Stacy to see if she has anything else to add.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Great job. And just thank you all for being here and joining in today. We're working with several of the state after school networks across the country to provide this webinar and others as we have them available. If you really like this and you want to share this with some of your coworkers or your team, we have it right now available also on our website. It's totally free. It's a resource we want to provide to after school programs and networks. So feel free to check us out at powerupfitness.net. See the other upcoming webinars that we've got, where we'll probably be changing the topic here in the next few weeks. So if you want to share this one specifically with your network, head over there now, or if you just want to be notified when we've got future topics available, in addition to the other free resources that we share along with our paid programs too. So we appreciate your time. Angel, I'll turn it over to you to see if there's anything else you need from us or want to instruct to attendees.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, now is a great time for those questions from attendees. So feel free to either take yourself off mute, or you can jump on the chat and throw in your questions. But if there isn't anything, Michelle and Stacy, thank you very much for taking your time and for coming and sharing the great resources that you guys provide. You guys shared some really amazing things, and hopefully, people are able to use them either at home or in program this summer or in the future once things have calmed down a little bit. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you, PowerUp. And I think that's it for today.
Awesome. Thank you
Cool.
all. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. See y'all soon.
Bye.